Today's video is brought to you by procrastination because I actually took these books off my shelf and packed them away months ago and then just never got around to selling them or donating them. So I thought today, why not pull them out and talk about some of the reasons that I was going to unhaul them. So this will be my end of the year book unhaul, even though I technically went through the process of unhauling them like in fall. So the first book I want to talk about is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. Now, I used to follow her on Instagram. I really liked some of her poetry. So this was a gift that someone gave me for my birthday or Christmas sometime in 2017. Now, this is a short book. Her form of poetry is very, short form, no punctuation, includes these little drawings. Like, I'm sure you've seen this work around. And even though I've had this book for 3 years, I have never finished it. And I think that's a sign. I personally am more a fan of spoken word rather than written poetry. I cannot tell you how many episodes of Def Poetry Jam or Def Poetry Slam, I forget the name of it, that I watched on YouTube all throughout my adolescence and my teen years. And I actually watched a couple YouTube videos of her reading her own poetry that I found much more captivating than what I was reading on the page. That being said, if I have not finished it now, 3 years after getting it, it's just taking up space. I most likely will not buy her second book of poetry, which I believe is called The Sun and Her Flowers. I only have one other poetry book on my shelf that I'm not ready to give up yet, but I think perhaps I just need to kind of stick to my lane, which is spoken word. And even though there are some poems, like I know I still have a couple of her poems like saved in that little feature on Instagram that I really like, I don't think I enjoyed enough of them. That is my cat causing chaos. I don't think I enjoy enough of them to want to read an entire book or own an entire book. So this one's gonna have to go. The next book I want to talk about was a gift from, I say a gift, it was a secondhand book from a friend who didn't really enjoy it and kind of wanted to get rid of it. And I was curious. It's Mixed Race Superman by Will Harris. And I did not really enjoy it either. And it also was a DNF for me. She sent this to me earlier this year, so maybe like 8 or 9 months ago. And I was surprised at how short it was because she's a reader. So for her to say that it was a struggle to get through, I was expecting something much more dense. But in my opinion, the individual stories that this person tells, and this is hard because like this is his life, so I don't mean to critique his life, but the stories that he tells, at least the ones that I read with, 40 pages into the book, I felt were not written in a particularly unique or captivating way. And in the moments in which there seemed to be like a larger life lesson to be learned, or it was a revelatory moment for him in his progression and development of recognizing and owning himself as a mixed race person in a predominantly white country, I felt that I had already heard / seen / read the same revelations, the same ideas, the same takeaways from other authors and other films and other forms of media in a way that was frankly more interesting. I overall tend to finish books. I know I've said that in previous videos that it's really rare for me to not finish a book. And a lot of these books you'll find, maybe not a lot, but a number of these books you'll find are going to fall into this DNF category, which to me means like I'm never going to read it. Like I have been slowly working through Anna Karenina for so long now, it probably could be considered a DNF, but I have not given up. This I've given up on. And again, I feel kind of bad because this is literally his life. It's a collection of essays and memoirs. And while I think his story is worth telling, I just did not find the execution of it particularly captivating. So I'm going to also have to let this one go. And I'll be curious to know, if anybody in my life wants this book from me, because it's already kind of like bounced from one friend to another, and if they like it too, or if they dislike it too. Next we have Brave New World Revisited by Aldous Huxley. This is embarrassing. I have tried to read Brave New World 3 times now. In school, I just couldn't focus, and I was dealing with my own other stuff, so I just spark notes it and went on my way. A few years ago, I bought a copy of the book, used, like I buy most of my books, and it clearly had been used by a student, a very smart, studious student, because there were so many highlighted portions and underlined sentences and like thick paragraphs of notes in the margins that I found it too distracting, so I ended up giving it away. So just again, I think I was on my phone, I think it was late at night, I tried to buy Brave New World again, and I accidentally bought the Revisited. So these are like essays and notes and commentary from Huxley. When was this published? many years after Brave New World was published and became a bestseller. Like, this is not something that he wrote like the year afterwards. And while this could have been interesting, I don't want to read this before I read the book. And because I've had such a poor track record of trying to get my hands on this book, it feels odd to keep this. It just feels weird to keep it, honestly. I am someone who will read forwards and read epilogues in books, but I don't think I've ever read an author's commentary and reflection on their own work X amount of years later. So this was totally my bad. Again, it was like less than $5 I got it used, but still, like, girl, pay attention to what you're buying. The next book on my list is Dearly Devoted Dexter by Jeff Lindsay. I mentioned this in a previous video, but this book was also given to me by a date. I think it was Tinder. I went on a Tinder date. The guy was a reader too. We were talking about books, and while we were talking, before we went on the date, he was talking about how much he loved these books, how I should read them, and he said he'd bring me one so I could read it after our date. And I was like, I love this idea. Let's share books. Let's talk about things we like. Of course, I had heard the TV show, but I never watched it. So he gave me this, and then he ghosted me. So I never gave it back. I have too much pride to text someone who clearly does not want to spend time with me, which is fine, to be like, hey, do you want your book back? And it's been on my shelf because it makes me laugh. Honestly, it makes me laugh when I look at this. And I haven't read it just because, I don't know. I've never read any serial killer novel. I also have read very, 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 very few detective or mystery novels in my life. And basically this whole Unhaul came about because I finally got a bookshelf and I'm so excited. But I couldn't fit everything on the shelf and I don't have enough space right now to buy another one. So I really was like, okay, what books do I really want to keep and what am I holding on to for reasons that are nonsensical? This is a nonsensical reason to hold on to a book because it makes me laugh and it reminds me of a Tinder date. But I'm going to let this go. If there's anybody who really loves this series and is like, hey, no, you should absolutely read it, let me know, since this video will probably be posted before I make it to Goodwill or to, a secondhand books. But I just wanted to tell that story because I thought it was funny. Next, we have a children's book. My Name is Georgia, a portrait by Jeanette Winter. I am unhauling this book for a very, very simple reason, which is that it is paperback. I do not do paperback children's books. I cannot explain why. It is a preference. It is like a tactile thing. I like the sturdiness. I like the strength. I like the durability of hardcover children's books. And while I did enjoy this book mainly because of the animation style, I'm interested in other Georgia O'Keefe children's books. It's interesting because I have yet to figure out what is my niche necessarily when it comes to collecting children's books? Because this one, I believe, and by niche, I mean category. I believe this one is for ages 3 to 5. And I have some books that the prose is equally as simple. The pictures are, the pictures are designed in a way, the illustrations are designed in a way that seems to be more geared toward younger audiences. But I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure out what is the area in which I really, really like children's books. What is that specific subgenre? Because yes, I'm unhauling this because it's paperback, which is a silly reason, but also this isn't my favorite. This isn't one of my favorite children. This is not one of my favorite children's books I've ever read. And I want to try to explore other children's books that also talk about Georgia O'Keefe because she was one of my favorite painters when I was growing up, and rediscovering her work as an adult has been really, really interesting. And I want to learn more about her life. Next, we have Family Trust by Cathy Wang. I actually called this Family Affair accidentally in my last video. I guess I was on a Mary J. Blige moment. But this book was also a gift. I don't remember why. I mean, it has a beautiful cover. That's great, but I know that's not why my friends or family bought this for me. I feel like I must have read a blurb and I've been interested enough to be like, hey, can I have this for my birthday? Since this is not the type of book I normally go for. But this is a story of an Asian American family that has a lot of secrets from each other, that has a patriarch who is dying. And the book bounces back and forth between different people's perspectives, the sister, the brother, the husband, we're talking the nanny, a woman that your husband was having an affair with that you become friends with. If you're really interested in again, family drama and scandals, but also kind of the more heartfelt questions of, is this the life that I wanted to live? Is this the life that I'm going to live? What adult choices, because everybody in this book is an adult, what like adult choices do I need to make in order to get to where I want to go? I found it entertaining. I found it entertaining because of the drama around the family. I found it entertaining because as someone who's in their 20s and all these characters were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, I was like I had a lot of feelings about, is this what it's going to be? Like, is this what adulthood is? Is this what, marriage and retirement and dating after 50 is? Like, I had a lot of but it's not something that I would reread, because now that I know what happens to everyone and how they end up, I'm not particularly interested in going back and re-experiencing it. And if I'm not going to reread a book, that's usually a pretty good sign that I don't need to keep it. I do have some books on my shelves that I have not reread yet, and maybe I won't reread. Like, it's probably gonna be a long time before I reread Hayden Herrera's Frida Kahlo biography, because that thing is, she thick girl. But I would never give that book up because I loved it so much. This, despite the thickness of this one, don't be intimidated. I mean, this text is not bad at all. It's a fast read. It's a simple read. Not simple in that it's poorly written, but just straightforward. It's telling the story of these lives. And yeah, if I was going to do ratings, if I was someone who's going to do ratings, I'd probably give it like a 2.5, and that it's average. 2.5 is half of 5. I've noticed some people on this platform think that anything below 3 is bad. That's not what I mean. It's just something that I don't regret reading and was a fun, entertaining read, but it's not something that I would read again. And I will say, though, I am interested in reading more from Cathy Wang, because there were moments in which I was like, ooh, I love the way you describe this. Like, I love the way that you set this scene. And even though I'm not particularly attached to these characters, I wonder what it would feel like to read this style of writing about a different subject. So I am going to check out more Cathy Wang. After that, we have another memoir, which is obviously Stories from My Timeline by Akilah Hughes. Now, she is she's technically still a YouTuber, although she posts way more infrequently than she used to. But this is someone, Akilah, who went by Akilah, obviously, on YouTube, who I really, really enjoyed their videos and their content. And now she has, I said, mainly moved off the platform. She is a co-host or a host, I'm not sure which, on What a Day, which is a mainly political podcast. And actually, the only reason I knew that is because my partner listened to a lot of political podcasts. And when she first started, he was like, isn't this that girl, Akilah, that you like? So I'm glad that she's doing big things and has found has found another career avenue that is more fulfilling to her, because some YouTube stuff happened that she said kind of drove her off the platform. But I bought this because, one, I wanted to support her. This is her debut novel, her debut book, her first book. And I wanted to learn more about her. And I feel that I have achieved both of those things, and I no longer need to keep it. I bought this new, I paid full price. It is a beautiful book. I wanted that money to go in her pocket. I got to learn more about her family, about her career, her upbringing, some major moments in her 20s that she felt kind of set her on specific paths, her views on relationships and friendships. There's some like frenemy stuff in here as well, and some straight enemy stuff, frankly, if that's your bag. And I enjoyed all of it. But it was not written in a way, again, like with the Cathy Wang novel, it was not written in a way that would make me want to reread it now that I know what is going to happen or what has happened, just for like the prose or just for like, to read the writing. That's not this book. And one thing I did dislike about this that I also disliked about a couple other memoirs I've read, so I think it's just like a structure thing. This did not go in chronological order. It was like each chapter, each essay had a title, had a topic, and they seemed to kind of be lumped in certain ways. It was like, okay, now she's in her 20s. All right, now she's doing YouTube. Okay, now this is a family section. But I found that kind of jarring when I was trying to get when I felt I was trying to get a more broad overview about who she was and how she got here. Again, like, I know the whole collection of essays format is very, very popular, but I have read versions of those books in which the essays are still ordered in a way that to me made logical sense or made sense like within a timeline. So that was a small annoyance I had with it, but really I feel like I achieved everything I wanted to achieve with this book, and so keeping it doesn't really do anything for me anymore. But of course, I wish her the best in all of her career endeavors. After this, we have Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. I already spoke about this book in a wrap-up, and I have not gone back and rewatched that wrap-up. I don't really watch my old videos since I posted it, so I'm curious to do that after I film this video and see if my opinions have changed. But the more I thought about this book, the more I think I might have been potentially too generous in that review. I loved My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh that I read earlier this year. And I loved it so much that I wanted to read her newest novel. This is her newest release, Death in Her Hands. And I was so disappointed. This is a combination of murder mystery / kind of psychological thriller. You're spending the entire novel takes place in the main character's head, and in many ways you're watching her devolve, and you're absolutely watching the world through her eyes. So she's an unreliable narrator. This book kind of flows back and forth between like, is it a real murder mystery or is she just losing it? And not to give any spoilers, but I felt the conclusion was incredibly unsatisfying. A phrase that we have in theater when actors are choosing between two artistic choices that of course are both supported by the text is which one is the most interesting. Yes, it's like, based on the script and based on the character, it would make sense for you to scream and cry in this moment. But which one is the most interesting choice for the audience? And I felt that this book consistently made the least interesting choice. And again, as I said, that's completely personal preference. And maybe there are some folks who did not want a more traditional murder mystery or traditional mystery. They wanted this more kind of like psychological playground thing going on. And even though I found it genuinely unsettling and also very captivating at certain portions, it really, really started to drag towards the middle and the end. And there also was a big chunk in the middle where the main character is doing a lot of writing. She's creating her own narrative. So reading a fictional narrative about a fictional character creating their own fictional narrative, I did not enjoy. I did not enjoy that part at all. Because I dislike this book a decent amount, but I love My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I feel like I have to give Ottessa Moshfegh at least one more shot. Eileen, I've heard interesting things about that. I think that's the only other book of hers that I know, but I know she has... That's the only other book of hers that the title comes to my mind, but I know she has others. I would not recommend this book, but I am very, very curious as to if I'm going to like Eileen. I hope I do, because I would love it if Ottessa Moshfegh became an author who I could have like a whole shelf of their works and someone I really want to support. But it may just be My Year of Rest and Relaxation is, as an individual book, going to be one of my favorites, but gotta let this one go. The next one should be no surprise to anybody. I still have this. I made an entire rant review on this book that I will post in the atmosphere, and I still have it just because I just, like I said, I haven't donated any books recently. I haven't sold any books recently. A short version, trying to talk about this text, is that this is a nonfiction text that I bought because I was interested in learning more about Wicca, and the author of this book is someone who, in this book, says transphobic things, centers the idea of femininity and womanhood around genitalia, like your uterus and your ovaries, used a lot of terminology that I found very uncomfortable and very jarring, that I just frankly don't want to repeat here because I don't even want to say monetization. I just don't want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about it. You can go watch that video. And I haven't made a rant review since that video because I dislike the process of making that video. Talking about this book does not make me feel good. The one thing I will say about it in this video that's positive, in case someone's like, I might be interested in that, if you are someone who doesn't think trans women are women, if you are someone who thinks cultural appropriation is just, a bunch of PC liberal bullshit, if you are someone whose idea of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be powerful and what it means to have a place in history on Earth is very, very rooted in your ability to have a period, is very rooted in your ability to have children, having a uterus, having ovaries, if that's what your idea of womanhood is, and if you are looking for a kind of, I would say mid to early 2000s type feminism, she-ro, she-history kind of thing, in addition to some of the nonfiction information of this is where we get the word Wicca from, and this is what a Yule calendar is, and here are the horn god and the god. If you're looking for a mix of those things, this book will be for you. I know some people, because I've seen responses to it, really love this book, but in no way is this something that I want to keep. And the last book I want to talk about is difficult for me to talk about because I have such a visceral reaction to it, but it is Delia's Tears, Race, Science, and Photography in 19th Century America by Molly Rogers. Based on that title, the back flap. I bought this book. I did not do research on this. This was something I bought like at one of those outdoor secondhand book markets. And when I started reading it, I was confused because I understood the nonfiction stuff. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for information on the history of medical racism. I was looking for information about just frankly the inhumane treatment and torture of these Black slaves that was the foundation for a lot of medical practices now. I was looking for a nonfiction text. And while there is a lot of valuable historical information in here, while there is a lot of nonfiction, which is what I was looking for, which is what I wanted to do, I couldn't finish it. I could not finish it for one specific reason. In every chapter, there is a photograph of a Black person who was enslaved. And next to that photograph is a fictional page or two of what they were thinking and feeling. And this is who wrote this book. So, before we, get into a huge argument about whether or not authors of one race or background are allowed to write characters from another race or background, please know that I agree with that. I think any author should be able to write characters from any race, background, gender, ethnicity, as long as they do it well, as long as they do their research, as long as they do it respectfully. And I do not think those stories should be prioritized over stories that are actually written by people from that background, which is a publishing thing. Like I as an individual, I don't have any feelings or negative feelings about if a white author wrote a character that's Black and a woman. What I have problems with is if the publishing industry only publishes books about Black women when they're written by a privileged voice. That's a different conversation. And this is also different to me because these were real people. These were real people. We have their photos, we have their first names, in many cases we have their ages, and we know what happened to them. We know what these white men, white doctors, white politicians, white photographers did to them. And I personally find the inclusion of a fictional, like, he told me, boy, to come here and I was scared, but I stood up. Like, why? Why the hell would you include that? Why is that necessary? And why did you, a white woman, think you have the right to create a fictional narrative of what happened in their minds or how their bodies felt or, what they felt before they started crying right before these things happened? Who thought this was a good idea? Like, I couldn't finish this book because I found it so uncomfortable and I found it so distasteful. If this was just solely nonfiction, a research historical review, just a full overview and perspective about this material. Like Molly Rogers identifies as a writer and an independent scholar. Great. Independent scholar, talking about these 7 South Carolina slaves that were photographed in the 1850s and just science, photography, race. Like that could have been it. Like this, I bought this because I was like, this is an excellent topic to explore. I would love to learn more about it. The inclusion of the fictional narratives is not okay. It's not okay. And that's why I'm getting rid of that book. And in hindsight, I wish I had not ended on that book because it upset me every time I look at it, and I'm clearly worked up now, but I am glad to be getting it out of the house. I'm glad to be getting all of these books out of the house, along with some other, college textbooks that I don't read anymore. I'm gesturing down here because this is where the box is. A GRE book back when I thought I was going to do that. Thankfully, I'm not. But all that being said, that is my end of the year unhaul. If you're someone who is into like purging or spring cleaning or any of those things, I would recommend going through your bookshelves. It can be a lot of fun to look back on books like Family Trust, which were fine, but you don't feel the need to keep anymore. Books like Delia's Tears, which you're like, this needs to be out of my house. And, books like Death in Her Hands, in which you wanted to support an author, you wanted to try something new from their canon, and wasn't a fan of it, but you're ready to try again. So that's all I have for today, and I hope you have a good one.